So you guys know how much I love the 1911 platform. Well, today is a great day because I've got 1911s in 9mm, the Springfield Ronin, 10mm, the Kimber Super Jaeger, and of course, 45 ACP with the Springfield TRP. Love that 45. Welcome back to Sawtooth Tactical. Are you thinking about getting a 1911 and you feel like 45 ACP is the only way to go? A Springfield TRP here in 45. But I've also got a Springfield Ronin in 9mm and a Kimber Super Jaeger in the venerable 10mm. And I've done the testing so that you don't have to. Which is the best caliber for a 1911? Is it the 45? Is it 9mm? Or is it 10? That's what today's video is about. Went out shooting with all three of these, testing them out, seeing what the difference is in recoil, what might be the best use for each one. Maybe we can decide that during this video. We'll find out. But before we get started, just want to invite you to please like, comment, share, subscribe to Sawtooth Tactical. That is greatly appreciated. And I would like to thank Kaylin again for loaning me the Kimber Super Jaeger. And I'd like to thank Micah for loaning me the Springfield TRP for the last year. I've really appreciated both you guys. Let's get started. Traditionally, the 1911 was designed for the 45 ACP. But modern times, they've chambered it in 10mm, 9mm, and even 380 and 22. And you get different recoil impulses from all of them. Let's test out the 9. Little to no recoil. Now 45. And the 10mm. So when I decided to get my first 1911, what really motivated me was actually this gun, this Springfield TRP in 45 ACP. I was new into guns at the time, and I only owned one pistol. It was a Ruger Security 9 Pro in 9mm, and I was proud of that pistol. I was getting better at shooting. I was enjoying the hobby, the lifestyle. I was starting to carry concealed with it. And then I went to the range with my buddy Micah, who owns this 1911, and I was really impressed with this thing. It made my Ruger feel like a toy. And so that, started my love affair with 1911s. And of course, I felt like a 1911, had to be in 45, because when I looked at the ammo that he was feeding into his gun versus what I was putting in mine, man, that 45 is like the guy she tells you not to worry about compared to the 9mm, if you know what I mean. It's a much, much bigger cartridge than 9mm is. And so I went out and I bought a Springfield mil-spec 1911, which is basically their most basic 1911 as far as cost and features go. And I was really happy with that gun for a while until I decided that I wanted something a little bit more modern. And so I sold it and I bought this. This is a Springfield Ronin, and this is chambered in 9mm. And at first, I was looking for one in 45 because I felt like a 1911 was supposed to be in 45. That was the way John Moses Browning had intended it. And that's what I thought a 1911 was just supposed to be. And in fact, when I first got this Ronin, I had a ton of problems with it. And so that even made me think more that the 1911 was supposed to be a 45 caliber gun, that the design, the platform just didn't really work in other calibers. Now, I'm glad to say I was wrong about that, and I've got this pistol running absolutely perfectly, But it did take a long break-in period and a little bit of polishing work to get it there. Now recently, I've had the pleasure of shooting this. This is the Kimber Super Jaeger long slide, custom shotgun, ported slide and barrel. Comes with a Leupold Delta Point Pro 6-inch barrel chambered in 10mm. And this thing is freaking sweet. So now I've got to make the decision, or at least try to. What caliber is best for the 1911? So of the three, I would definitely say the 9mm is the softest shooting, as you'd expect. TRP in 45 ACP. So you guys know how much I love 1911s. And I've got 1911s in 45 and 9mm. But man, 10mm, you know what they call it, the best millimeter, right? So there's a few things to consider here. What are you going to be using your pistol for? The 1911 is a great, it's a great platform for bigger calibers for a few reasons. For one, just the way that the pistol is designed, it was designed to chamber 230 grain 45 ACP ball round, full metal jacket. And it does that very well. I've had little to no problems with this TRP. I had absolutely no problems with my Springfield mil-spec in 45. It is obvious that that's what the gun was designed for, and it was designed in a time before people were using hollow points and in a time when the knockdown power of 45 ACP was significantly better than 9mm. Well, times have changed, ammunition technology has changed, and 9mm is now in a very effective caliber. And one thing you get with it is you get more capacity. So my biggest drawback to the 1911 platform has always been capacity. You know, this pistol right here, I get 17 rounds in this. But this, even bigger gun, only holds 7. To me, that is kind of a big drawback. And so that was one of the benefits of getting a 1911 in 9mm. Now it still doesn't have the kind of capacity that you get with a modern polymer framed pistol, but at least the magazines carry 10 rounds rather than 7 or 8. And the reason for that is 9mm is a smaller round. But if you look at the magazine there, the magazine geometry actually has to change a little bit just to be able to accommodate 9mm, because it's also a shorter round than 45, and the geometry of the magazine well of a 1911 was designed for 45 ACP. Now 10mm is an interesting thing. So you can call it a few different things. 40 Smith & Wesson long, or you can call it 40 Smith & Wesson 10mm short. But it's a bigger round than 9mm by 1mm. A lot of people call it the best millimeter. There's a lot of benefits to 10mm. For one thing, it is an effective round against large predators. So, say you conceal carry something like this SIG P365. You know, I can carry 10 or 12 plus 1 in that and conceal it easily. It's light, easy to carry, comfortable, it doesn't print. It's perfect if I ever had to use something against 2-legged predators. Well, what if you had to use something against 4-legged predators? If you find yourself hunting, going out in the wilderness, in bear country, or, you know, mountain lion country, well, 10mm is something that you can be very confidently armed with. This is a caliber that people pistol hunt with it. And it is very effective at taking down large game. And for a pistol round, that is a fairly unique thing. And so, like I said, there are benefits to each one. And now when we talk about capacity, the 10 millimeter is kind of right between the 9 and the 45. So 10 millimeter is not quite as big a round as a 45 ACP, but it's 1 millimeter bigger around than 9 millimeter. And so whereas you get 7 or sometimes 8 rounds in a 45, and you get 10 or 11 in a 9 millimeter, you get right in the middle of that 9 rounds in a 10 millimeter. So pluses and minuses, right? And when people talk about knockdown power, now to an extent I do believe in it, and to an extent I don't. You can definitely tell when you're shooting a 45 versus a 9, there is significantly more recoil, which for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? So if I'm feeling more recoil coming into me, that means that there is more energy leaving the muzzle. And although 45 ACP is a fat, slow round compared to 9 millimeter, because of the added mass, there is more energy on target than 9 millimeter gets. Well, 10 millimeter is very unique because it packs more powder. So it doesn't have quite as much mass in the projectile as a 45, whereas your standard 45 ACP is like 230 grains. Your standard 10 millimeter is about 180 grains. And your standard 9 millimeter is much less than that. You know, it could be 115 up to about 147 generally, or 151 sometimes for like subsonic rounds. 124 grain is pretty standard. So grain has to do with mass, it's weight. So 115, 124, 147, 180 grain, 230 grain. So you are getting more mass on target with the 45 ACP for sure. But you're getting a lot more velocity out of the 9 millimeter. But you're getting velocity and mass with the 10 millimeter. There are some loadings of 10 millimeter that are extremely fast rounds and they're heavy. So the terminal ballistics, the energy on target, is fairly impressive for a pistol round. And carry some of these hollow points right here. That is a very effective round at that point. But again, carry hollow points in your 9 millimeter, and that's nothing to laugh at either. There's a reason that the FBI and most law enforcement and militaries around the world carry 9 millimeter. It is a very effective caliber. But again, more effective against two-legged predators than larger game or, four-legged predators, if you know what I mean. So when we take a look at all three of these 1911s, they all have fairly similar features. They're all very modern 1911s. And none of them do have your Picatinny light rail, but they've all got skeletonized triggers and hammers. They've all got very nice grips. I do have to admit that the 45 ACP, the TRP here, is by far the grippiest one because of this 20 lines per inch checkering on the front strap and on the mainspring housing with these G10 grips. This thing, when you grab a hold of it, it grabs a hold of you back. The Ronin came with some wood grips that I replaced with G10 grips, which made a huge difference. It also has the 20 lines per inch checkering on the back strap, or the mainspring housing, but pretty smooth on the front strap. Although, with it being in 9 millimeter, the recoil is so low, I haven't found that to be a problem. And with the Kimber here, you've got some very interesting machining on the front strap and the mainspring housing. And with the wooden grips that it has, you've got texture on the front half of the grips, which is pretty much where you need it. And they sure do just look good. But all three of them have nice extended safeties. Both the TRP and the Kimber have ambi safeties, whereas the Ronin only has it on the one side. And although I am left-handed, I shoot right-handed, so that works perfectly fine for me. Now, as far as sighting systems go, the TRP has tritium night sights, which is very nice. The Ronin has a fiber optic front and a combat 3-dot rear. There's also a tactical rack sight, so you can rack this off your belt or anything if you need to manipulate it one-handed, which is very nice. And the Kimber Super Jaeger here doesn't even come with iron sights, but comes stock with the Delta Point Pro. And if you know me, you know how much I advocate for red dots on pistols or any other platform for that matter. I just love a red dot. So it's hard to say which sighting system I like the best. I really do like red dots, but both of these come with fantastic iron sights as well. Now, all three of them have front and rear slide serrations. Both of the Springfields have the actual serrations on the front and the rear, but the Kimber has a ported slide and barrel, which works the same way as slide serrations would as far as manipulating your slide from the front, which I like to do. It's nice to be able to press check and know if you have a round in there. But also, when you have a red dot on the back, it's not as easy to get a hold of your rear slide serrations, so it's nice to be able to manipulate it from the front. Now that ported slide and barrel makes a huge difference when it comes to recoil, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. I just wanted to give you guys a close-up of these guns because all three of them are very handsome pistols. I just love the way a 1911 looks. It's, in my opinion, it is the best looking pistol that there is. So how do these guns shoot? Well, they're all very reliable. Now, if you follow the channel, you probably remember that I did have a lot of problems with this Springfield Ronin when I first got it. Luckily, it seemed just to be an issue with a break-in period. After a few hundred rounds, the thing is running about perfectly, and I can't complain anymore. But I think that the 1911 platform was designed for 45 ACP, and it just does seem to feed it and eject it and fire it better than 9mm. I have had no problems with this TRP. It's been perfectly reliable, and it just works. It really does. And anybody that's owned a Springfield TRP will tell you the same. It's got a great reputation. At the same time, this Kimber custom shotgun, I've had zero issues with it either. Now, I haven't put as many rounds through this as I have either of these Springfields, but in the time that I've had this, it has had zero malfunctions whatsoever. And I know from the owner of the pistol itself, Kalen, thank you again, Kalen, for loaning me this, he hasn't had any problems with it either. So it's a very reliable gun as well. As far as accuracy, they're all very accurate. The 1911 is one of the most accurate pistol designs that there is. It's because of the way that the barrel locks up with in the slide, because of the weight of the gun, because of the single action trigger design. It's a very, very easy gun to shoot accurately and precisely, and also to shoot quickly. And all three of these have fantastic triggers, which makes a huge difference as far as how well you can shoot a gun. But which one can I shoot faster? Well, definitely the 9mm. And the reason for that is recoil. And whether you want to admit it or not, there is a big difference in recoil between 9mm, 45, and 10mm. Now, one thing that the Kimber has going for it is this ported frame or ported slide and barrel. I do believe that it makes a big difference in mitigating that recoil in the same way that a muzzle brake or a comp would on your AR. It ports gases out at the top of the barrel and slide, forcing the muzzle down, keeping your sights on target. With the big window from this Loophole Delta Point Pro, I never lost the dot in the window while I was shooting this. It was a fairly easy gun to shoot well, being that it's chambered in 10mm. Now, the TRP, also easy to shoot well in 45, and part of that is that it's a heavy gun, and so it soaks up a lot of the recoil of that 45 ACP very well. But the same thing that makes this gun easy to shoot in 45 makes this gun just a pussycat in 9mm. Of all my pistols that I own, of all my pistols that I have owned, this Springfield Ronin in 9mm is so extremely soft shooting. It's like it doesn't even recoil. And I hate to use the comparison. People would say it's like a 22, but it kind of is. It really has like zero recoil. You know, you get some movement from the slide reciprocating back and forth, but the push from the round itself is minimal. And that makes it a really, really pleasurable gun to shoot. I got to admit, of all three of these, I enjoy shooting this one the most. Now, does it have the same kind of knockdown power? Probably not. You know, if I have to defend myself against a bear with this versus with this, I'm going to be bummed. I definitely would rather have something like this in bear country than a 9mm. But if I have to defend myself against a human being, 9mm is going to be perfectly effective. And the fact that I have more rounds at my disposal and can put them on target quicker because the gun returns to zero faster, that actually makes me feel like I am more effective with the 9mm than with either of the other ones. Now, funny thing is, I do live in an area that has great outdoor wilderness, and where I go shoot is one of those places. I haven't ran into a bear out there, but I've seen mountain lion cougar tracks often. So it is a place that you might run into a predator. And I'll admit, having a 10mm on you is not a bad idea if you are regularly out in areas like that. At the same time, I'm generally out there with, you know, a 300 blackout or a 7.62 by 39 or a 5.56 at the same time as any pistols I'm shooting. I'm usually very well armed when I go into these places. So it's probably not going to be an issue. And especially when what you're doing is something that is very loud, there's not a really high chance that you're going to get attacked out there while you're out shooting. But you never know. I go hiking a lot, and I think something like this 10mm would be a great thing to take with you on a hike out in the woods, especially if you're like a solo hike or something. Man, be prepared, because my brother has ran into a grizzly bear. My dad has ran into a mountain lion. These things do happen, and you're going to feel a lot more comfortable if you know that you can defend yourself against them. So 45 ACP is a big fat bullet, which is awesome for stopping power, but it leaves a little bit to desire when it comes to capacity. So you end up doing a lot of reloading. So when it comes to capacity, unless you have a 2011 or a double stack 9mm 1911, a standard 1911, 9mm does get you the best capacity with, 10 plus 1 rather than 9 for the 10mm or 7 or 8 for the 45. But even at 10 rounds per magazine, you're still reloading a lot. I love this Ronin. If there's one thing about 10mm, is that the ammo is expensive. Got a couple rounds left. And that's it. So which one of these is my favorite? Well, I'll admit, I think the 10mm is probably the most effective caliber out of all of them. But my favorite one to shoot, even despite not having a red dot like the Kimber Super Jaeger does, is my 9mm Springfield Ronin. Now that I've gotten the kinks worked out of it, this gun is just a real pleasure to shoot. The 1911 platform being so accurate and so fast with the single action trigger, with the heavy barrel, heavy slide, just a heavy frame, heavy platform, but chambered in 9mm. The recoil on this thing is nothing. I think the recoil of the two of these is fairly similar. Now, I think normally 10mm recoil is a little more than 45, but again, that ported slide and barrel seems to make a huge difference. So, the 10mm recoil out of this platform, not bad at all. But I gotta admit, you know, when it comes to recoil, who really wants to deal with more recoil? Not me so much. I love shooting this 9mm one. And as much as I really enjoy both of these other 1911s, I'm glad that this is the one that's in my personal collection. I think of the three of these, this is probably the most interesting one for sure. It's going to get you the most looks at the range and the most questions. People are going to wonder what the heck this hand cannon is that you're shooting. And just for that reason alone, it's a pretty cool thing to have. Also, just the fact that it has an optic gives it an added capability that either of these others have. The Springfield TRP probably has the best reputation out of the three of these though. This did actually see duty use, and it was designed for, I can't remember exactly who right now, but some special forces team or something. It's the Tactical Response Pistol by Springfield, and it is designed to be a tactical 1911. The only real issue I have with it is that 7-round capacity, but this is a fantastic gun. I guess what my point really is that you can't go wrong with any of these. If you get yourself a 1911 that's from a reputable brand that you know is going to be reliable and accurate, that has a good feeling single action trigger and is made out of quality components and put together by a company that knows what they're doing and has plenty of experience building 1911s, such as Springfield Armory or Kimber, you're going to have a good gun no matter what. 1911s are awesome. As much as I love polymer frame striker fired pistols, there's just something about a 1911 that feels right. It just feels good in your hand. It's easy to shoot it well. I swear, I promise, if you give any new shooter this versus this, they're not going to enjoy shooting this as much as this. This just makes you feel like you know what you're doing. It's so much easier to put rounds on target. And if you give them something like this, chambered in 9mm, that has such minimal recoil, it's just going to make it that much easier for them. But then if you're an experienced shooter, like I'm sure lots of you are, or like I am myself, shooting something like this does the same thing for us as well, and just makes the shooting experience that much more enjoyable. But no matter which one you go for, you're not going to go wrong. The classic 45 ACP, fantastic choice. If you're going out in bear country or you just want a frickin' manly hand cannon, go with a 10mm. But if you want something that is going to be the smoothest shooting thing that you have ever put your hands on, go with the 9. They're all great choices. And I gotta say, of all the guns that I don't own that I want right now, I want a 2011. I want a double stack 1911 chambered in 9mm, because I want that ultimate in smooth, fast, accurate shooting gun, but I want the capacity. And so I really want to get the Springfield Prodigy DS 1911. It's chambered in 9mm, but it's got a capacity of 17, 20, or even 26 rounds. And that's what I want. I'm going to get one eventually. I hope you guys like 1911s. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and share this video. Please comment. Tell me what you think 1911s should be chambered in, or what your favorite round to shoot out of a 1911 is, and what your favorite manufacturer is. Who makes your favorite 1911? Please let me know. Please let me know if you agreed with anything that I said in this video or not. And from Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped.